I will never forget the look on her face that evening. We were sitting in the grand dining hall of my own home, the one I had built brick by brick with my late husband. My son, Daniel, had just announced his engagement to Claire, the young woman he swore was the love of his life. I wanted to be happy for him. Truly, I did. But then it happened. As we all sat down for dinner, I noticed Claire staring at me with that fake, sugary smile plastered on her face. She whispered something to Daniel, then giggled. At first, I brushed it off. But a few minutes later, she raised her voice just enough for the whole table to hear. "Daniel," she laughed, "isn't it adorable that your mom still dresses like she's stuck in the 80s? That floral dress is so vintage." The table went quiet. My fork trembled in my hand. I wasn't angry about the insult itself. I had endured worse in my lifetime. What shook me was that my own son chuckled along with her. He didn't defend me. Not once. That was the moment something inside me cracked. I smiled politely, though my heart was breaking, and I said nothing. Not yet. But deep inside, I made a promise to myself. I would not allow this woman to humiliate me in my own house, nor would I allow her to sink her claws into everything my husband and I had worked for. She thought she was clever, flaunting her youth, mocking my clothes, and flashing her expensive handbags at family dinners. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been holding on to a secret that would turn her smirk into terror. That night, as she strutted around the table like she already owned the place, I excused myself. I went to my study, opened the locked drawer, and pulled out the single envelope that held everything: the deed, the will, the final word. And when I returned to the table, carrying that envelope in my hand, I caught her eye. Her laughter died instantly. Her face turned pale, because she realized in that moment that the game she thought she was winning was already over. After that humiliating moment at the table when Claire mocked my dress, I pretended not to care. I smiled, even laughed lightly, though inside I felt like someone had twisted a knife in my chest. Daniel didn't even notice how hurt I was, or perhaps he did, but chose not to acknowledge it. He was too busy basking in the glow of his fiancée's beauty, too blind to see the arrogance behind her polished smile. I had cooked that dinner myself, despite Emily's offer to help. Emily, my daughter, has always been more attentive. She knew how important that night was for me, the first time I was officially welcoming Claire into our family home. I wanted everything perfect. The roast, the candles, even the old china that had belonged to my mother, but Claire didn't care about any of it. She picked at her food as if it were beneath her, her manicured fingers hovering over her phone more often than her fork. When she laughed about my dress, Emily shot me a look across the table, the kind of look only a daughter gives her mother. A silent, "Don't let her get to you." But I could see Emily's jaw tighten. She didn't like Claire from the very beginning. After dinner, while the others moved to the living room, I slipped into the kitchen. Emily followed. "Mom," she whispered, "she's already acting like she owns this place." I hushed her quickly, not wanting Daniel to overhear. "He's happy," I said, though the words tasted bitter. That's all that matters, but deep down, I knew happiness built on disrespect never lasts. And as I washed the dishes, I thought, if Claire could openly mock me on her very first official evening as my son's fiancée, what would she do once she married into this family? I would soon find out. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in the study, the same room where my husband, Richard, and I had spent countless evenings planning our future. He's been gone for 5 years now, but his presence lingers in every corner of this house. We bought this land when Daniel was only 10 and Emily 7. Back then, it was nothing but a stretch of neglected farmland. Everyone said we were foolish, that we'd never manage to build a life here. But Richard was stubborn, and I was hopeful. Together, we turned that land into a home. Brick by brick, room by room, we built it. Richard worked double shifts. I took on sewing and bookkeeping jobs to add to our savings. We sacrificed vacations, new clothes, and even a proper honeymoon just to afford this place, and it wasn't just a house. It was the heart of our family. Daniel learned to ride his bike on this driveway. Emily planted her first rose bush in the garden. Every birthday, every holiday, every hard conversation, it all happened within these walls. That's why Claire's mocking tone cut so deeply. She wasn't just laughing at a dress. She was laughing at everything I represented, the old values, the sacrifices, the past she clearly found outdated. I ran my fingers over the polished wood of Richard's desk, remembering his words the day we signed the final papers for the property. No matter what happens, this will always be ours. No one can take it from us. But I was starting to realize someone was trying. It started subtly. Claire would make offhand remarks whenever she visited. "This place is charming," she said once, wrinkling her nose. "But don't you think it's a little outdated? I mean, Daniel and I could do so much with it if it were ours." I tried to ignore it, but the comments kept coming. When I wore my favorite necklace, a simple gold chain Richard had given me on our 25th anniversary, Claire asked, "Oh, is that real gold? Vintage jewelry can be valuable. I wonder if it's insured." The way she said it, with that gleam in her eye, made my stomach turn. Emily grew more suspicious with every visit. "She's testing boundaries," she warned me. "She wants to see how far she can push." But Daniel? He seemed oblivious. He brushed everything off with a laugh. "Claire just has expensive taste, Mom. Don't take it so seriously. Expensive taste. Or greedy hands?" One Sunday afternoon, we were all gathered in the living room. Claire looked around, her eyes scanning the paintings, the furniture, the heirlooms. Finally, she smiled sweetly at me and said, "You know, once Daniel and I are married, we'll probably have to modernize this whole place. Maybe knock down a few walls, change the furniture, get rid of some of these antiques," Emily gasped. I clenched my fist. "And Daniel?" He actually nodded in agreement. The weeks after the engagement dinner felt like a slow, steady invasion. Claire was always around, fluttering through the house as if she owned it, making little comments that chipped away at my patience. "This wallpaper has to go," she said one afternoon, brushing her manicured hand against the floral pattern Richard and I had chosen years ago. "Daniel and I could really bring this place into the 21st century." Daniel laughed. "She has an eye for design, Mom. Don't worry, she just wants the best for us. For us." Those words stung. It wasn't their house. It was mine. Richard and I had built it, sacrificed for it, held on to it through good years and lean ones. And yet suddenly I felt like a guest in my own home. Claire didn't stop at the house. She suggested I sell my late husband's car, a classic Richard had lovingly restored. "It's just sitting there," she said. "Daniel and I could put that money to good use." I noticed the way Daniel hesitated, as if torn between loyalty to his father's memory and his fiancée's demands. But in the end, he sided with her. He always did. Emily grew angrier each time she visited. "She's erasing Dad, one step at a time," she whispered to me in the kitchen. "And Daniel's letting her." I wanted to believe Daniel was just blinded by love, that he'd come around. But the more Claire pushed, the more he pulled away from me. One evening, as I stood in the garden watering Emily's roses, I heard Claire's voice drifting through the open window. "Why is your mom so attached to this place? Imagine what we could do if we sold it. Think of the down payment on a new house closer to the city. Daniel, this is our future. She's holding us back." I froze, my hands trembling around the hose, and then I heard Daniel's reply. "I'll talk to her. She'll come around." After that night, things only worsened. Daniel began making excuses not to spend time with me unless Claire was there. When we did sit together, she steered every conversation back to money, property, or what young couples need to thrive. At first, I tried to reason with Daniel. "Son," I said softly one evening, "your father and I built this house for you and Emily. It's not just bricks and walls. It's our story." But Daniel's expression was distant. "Mom, you're too sentimental." "Claire's right. We can't cling to the past forever." I swallowed my hurt, but Emily didn't. "He's brainwashed," she snapped when we were alone. "And she's doing it on purpose. Don't you see? She doesn't want him to love this home because she wants to replace it, and you." Emily was right, though I hated to admit it. The breaking point came one Sunday. Claire staged a dramatic sigh as we finished lunch. "You know," she said, twirling her hair, "it would make things so much easier if your mom just signed over the property now. That way we could start planning without all this uncertainty." I dropped my fork. Daniel said nothing. He just stared at his plate, and in that silence, I understood. He wasn't going to protect me. Later that evening, Emily stormed into my room. "Mom, you need to protect yourself. Claire's not going to stop. She'll push and push until Daniel chooses her over us. I touched Emily's hand, grateful for her loyalty. "Don't worry," I whispered. "Your father and I prepared for moments like this." Emily's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" One late afternoon, I came back from the market earlier than expected. As I stepped into the hall, I heard Claire's voice coming from the living room. She was on the phone, her tone sharp and businesslike, so unlike the sugary, sweet persona she put on in front of Daniel. "Yes, I know the property's in her name," she said impatiently, "but Daniel's the heir. Once we're married, it'll all fall into place. She's just being difficult." My heart pounded as I pressed against the wall, listening. "I don't care if it takes a few months," she continued. "I'll get her to sign something. Trust me, she won't even realize what she's agreeing to." I felt my knees weaken. It wasn't just idle greed anymore, and she was plotting, planning. At that moment, Emily's car pulled into the driveway. I slipped outside to greet her before Claire noticed I was home. I forced a smile, though my insides were shaking. "Mom?" Emily asked, frowning. "What's wrong?" I wanted to tell her everything, but fear held me back. Instead, I simply said, "We need to be careful. Claire isn't who she pretends to be." That night, I sat alone in my study, staring at the locked drawer where Richard's documents lay. I could almost hear his voice whispering, "Don't let anyone take what we built." My hand hovered over the key. Should I bring out the papers now, or wait until the moment was right? I hesitated, because timing, I knew, would decide everything. I couldn't shake the sound of Claire's voice from that phone call. The way she spoke, cold, calculating, like she was negotiating a business deal instead of talking about my home, made my skin crawl. That weekend, I decided it was time to seek advice. I called Mr. Hayes, our longtime family lawyer, and asked him to meet me discreetly. He had been a dear friend to Richard, the kind of man who always put honor before money. We sat in his office, surrounded by leather-bound books and the faint smell of pipe tobacco. I told him everything, about the mocking, the pressure, the phone call. He listened quietly, his fingers steepled under his chin. Finally, he leaned forward. "You were wise to come to me," he said. "Your husband prepared for this." Before he passed, he asked me to draft a clause in the will, something that ensures you remain in control until you decide otherwise. I blinked. "What clause?" Mr. Hayes opened a file drawer and pulled out a copy of the will. He slid it across the desk. "As long as you are alive, the property cannot be sold or transferred without your direct and willing consent. Not Daniel's, not anyone's, yours." Relief washed over me, but so did dread. Because if Claire ever discovered this, she'd only fight harder. I left his office with the papers tucked securely into my bag. That night, I sat in the study staring at them for hours. Richard's foresight was my shield now. But when would be the right time to use it? It began with subtle digs, as always. Claire would roll her eyes when I spoke or sigh dramatically when I hesitated to agree with her grand plans. But then she escalated. One evening, after Daniel invited a few of his friends over, Claire deliberately embarrassed me in front of them. "You know," she said loudly, gesturing around the living room, "Daniel and I could turn this place into something truly spectacular. Maybe even flip it for a huge profit. But his mother just can't let go of the past." Everyone laughed politely, thinking it was a harmless joke. Everyone except Emily. She glared at Claire like she could burn a hole through her. I smiled, but inside my chest, anger boiled. Later, when the guests had left, Claire cornered me in the kitchen. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she said softly, her sugary tone replaced by steel. "Why don't you just let go? You're old. You don't need all this space. Daniel and I could put it to better use." I stared at her. "This is my home, and it will stay that way," she smirked. "For now." Emily stormed in before I could reply, and Claire slipped away with a satisfied smile. My daughter grabbed my hands. "Mom, we can't let her keep doing this. She's going to break Daniel completely." I nodded, but in my heart I knew. Claire wasn't just trying to break Daniel. She was trying to erase me. The trap was set on a sunny Sunday brunch. Claire had organized the whole thing, insisting it would be casual family time. But when I walked into the dining room, I froze. On the table, next to the orange juice and pastries, sat a neat stack of papers. Legal papers. Claire's eyes sparkled as she gestured for me to sit. "Oh, don't worry," she said sweetly. "It's just some routine stuff. Insurance forms, tax updates, boring things. We thought it'd be easier if you just signed now instead of dragging it out. I picked up the top sheet. My blood ran cold. They weren't tax forms. They were property transfer documents. If I had signed them, everything, the house, the land, the savings, would have been in Daniel's name. I looked up slowly. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. Claire, however, stared straight at me, her smile sharp as glass. Go on, she urged. It'll make things easier for everyone. My hands trembled. For a split second, I thought of signing just to end the pressure, the arguments, the humiliation. But then I remembered Richard's voice. His promise that no one could take this from us unless I allowed it. I placed the pen down. I don't sign anything without my lawyer, I said firmly. Claire's smile faltered. But no. My voice was stronger than I expected. Not today. Not ever without Mr. Hayes. The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel looked stunned, Emily looked proud, and Claire, her face darkened with fury. After the brunch disaster, I knew I had to be careful. Claire had shown her hand, and if I wasn't cautious, she'd find another way to trap me. So I changed my strategy. Instead of resisting every little jab, I started to nod, to smile, even to agree when she rambled on about modernizing the house or streamlining the inheritance process. Emily hated it. Mom, why are you letting her talk to you like that? She whispered one night as we washed dishes together. I leaned closer and said, sometimes the best way to win a battle is to let your enemy think they're winning. The truth was, I needed Claire to get comfortable. I needed her to believe she had broken me down, that I was too tired to fight back. Only then would she reveal just how far she intended to go, and she did. The more I played along, the bolder she became. She brought catalogs for expensive renovations, circled properties in the city, and even made remarks about selling the old furniture and jewelry. One evening, she found me in the study. You know, once everything's settled, she said casually, Daniel and I could really transform this space. Maybe turn it into a modern office or even a nursery. Don't you think? I smiled faintly, hiding the anger that bubbled inside. Maybe. What she didn't know was that in the locked drawer of that very desk lay the deed. My safeguard, my weapon. The night of the dinner, I wore the same floral dress Claire had mocked weeks ago. Not because I lacked other clothes, but because I wanted her to underestimate me again. Daniel and Claire had invited not only family, but also a few of Daniel's colleagues and Claire's friends. The dining table was crowded, the air buzzing with chatter and laughter. I stayed quiet for most of it, just listening. And then Claire struck. Daniel, she said loudly, raising her glass, isn't it about time we took responsibility for this house? I mean, your mother has done her best, but she can't handle everything anymore. Gasps rippled through the table. Emily slammed her hand down. How dare you? But Claire kept going. Honestly, it's not fair to her either. She deserves to rest, to step aside and let us manage the future.
Don't you agree?
The eyes around the table turned to me. For a moment, I felt small, like an intruder in my own home. Claire's friends smirked, Daniel shifted awkwardly, and Emily's face was red with fury. I lifted my chin. And what exactly do you mean by that, Claire? Her smile widened, sharp and triumphant. I mean, it's time you hand over the deed, officially, publicly, tonight. The table fell silent. My heart pounded in my ears. When I returned, the envelope was in my hand. The room quieted as I placed it on the table, right in front of Claire. Her confident smirk faltered. What's that? She asked. I met her gaze. This, I said, my voice steady, is the truth. The truth you've been so eager to twist. I opened the envelope slowly, deliberately, letting the tension build. Out came the official deed, stamped and signed, along with a letter from Mr. Hayes. You see, I continued, my husband was a wise man. He knew greed could poison even the strongest families. So he made sure that this home, this property, would remain mine until the day I decide otherwise. Not Daniel's, not yours, mine. I slid the letter toward Claire. And as for these little schemes of yours, my lawyer has already been informed. Every time you've tried to trick me into signing, every time you've mocked or pressured me, it's all documented. Her face went pale. She glanced at Daniel for support, but he was frozen, his mouth half open, his eyes wide with shock. You thought I was weak, I said softly, but I was only waiting for the right moment. Claire's hands shook as she tried to laugh it off. This is ridiculous. Daniel, tell her, but Daniel didn't speak. He just stared at the papers in silence, and for the first time, Claire looked truly afraid. The silence after I laid out the deed was suffocating. You could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. Emily was the first to speak. She leaned forward, eyes blazing. Claire, I warned you. I told Mom you weren't here for love, only for what you could take. Claire's lips trembled, but she tried to recover, forcing a laugh. This is absurd. You're twisting everything. Daniel, say something! Daniel finally lifted his head. His face was pale, his voice shaky. Claire, did you really push Mom to sign those papers without telling me? Claire froze. It was for us, Daniel. For our future. He shook his head slowly, disbelief etched across his features. Our future doesn't mean stealing from my mother. Her mask cracked then. The sweet, polished woman was gone, replaced by someone raw and desperate. You don't get it, she snapped, her voice rising. Do you know how much money this house is worth? Do you know the life we could live if we sold it? And you're letting her ruin everything because of sentimentality? Gasps filled the room. Even her own friends looked uncomfortable. I leaned back in my chair, calm now. There it is. The truth. Claire's eyes darted from me to Daniel, to the deed still on the table. Her smirk was gone. All that remained was panic. Daniel, Claire pleaded, grabbing his arm. Don't let her do this. She's manipulating you. Think about us. About our future. We can't build a life if everything is tied up in this old house. Daniel pulled his arm back. For the first time, I saw clarity in his eyes, the fog of infatuation lifting. Claire, stop, he said firmly. This isn't about the house. This is about respect. You insulted my mother, pressured her, lied to me. Claire's voice shook. I did it for you. No, Daniel said, his voice steady now. You did it for yourself. Her face twisted with rage. She turned to me. You're ruining everything. If you cared about Daniel, you'd step aside. You'd let us have what's ours. Emily slammed her fist on the table. What's yours? This house doesn't belong to you, Claire. It never has, and it never will. For the first time since the engagement, I saw Daniel side with me, with Emily, with his family. His eyes filled with regret. Mom, I should have defended you. I should have seen it sooner. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Love can blind us, son, but it doesn't have to destroy us. Claire's voice cracked into a scream. You'll regret this, Daniel. You'll regret throwing away what I offered. As Claire grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, Emily's voice rang out, cold and sharp. Oh, Claire, one more thing. Don't bother running to the courts. Mr. Hayes has already filed a protective note against fraudulent transfers. Even if you tried, you wouldn't get a penny. Claire froze for half a second, her shoulders stiffening, before slamming the door behind her. The echo of it carried through the house, and then silence. Daniel sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. What have I done? I let her disrespect you, Mom. I let her poison everything. I stroked his hair gently, the way I used to when he was a boy. You were blinded by love. But now you see, that's what matters. Emily crossed her arms, still fuming. She'll try to come back. People like that don't give up easily, I nodded. Maybe, but she won't find the same family waiting for her. Not anymore. The rest of the night was quiet. Daniel apologized again and again, promising to earn back my trust. Emily stayed by my side, protective as ever. When I finally went to bed, I placed the deed back into its envelope and locked it safely away. My husband's foresight had saved us. His voice echoed in my mind. Respect matters more than money. And now, they all knew it. Greed can destroy love, but respect can rebuild a family. And now they know it too.